Hello, welcome back to Thoughts from Player One. No controller necessary. Release those fingertips and let the controller drop to the floor. This is a topic episode. As always, I'm Duncan.
I'm Alex.
And this week we are talking about video game content that has some sort of a let's play, stream, speedrun nature, some sort of media that is about playing a game, really. So we're
talking about watching people play games.
Yeah, watching people play games. You're making media when you're watching your friends play games. That's what we do, right? That's normal, right? That's what everyone does. Yes?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we look at a game that we're playing together and say, well, can we record this together and then never release it on YouTube? Yeah, I think that'd be fun.
It's fucked up how much we've done that, though. Like, I was thinking about that today more, like, God, everything we do, we at least have the discussion. Should we be doing this for the podcast or Twitch or YouTube or something like that? Are we allowed to just have fun as friends? Can we do that still?
Yeah, it is becoming decreasing. There's less real estate of just things that we've done and then just converted them into media. So anyways, let's just get right into talking about this. So I kind of wanted to get your levels, how you were feeling about different styles of watching people play games, right?
All right.
First off, I think the obvious one is just purely watching someone else like a friend, play a game. And then there's the other one that is just, watching other people on the internet play games that you don't really know personally, or, it's like a popular streamer or just, someone you're checking out. What is your sort of overall temperature on both of those? Like, how much of that do you consume? How often are you doing these things? What's your feelings on it?
So in terms of just watching somebody I know play games, that's definitely something that I do, I would say a decent amount of, in terms of, there's the screen sharing / streaming through Discord where you can just stream to other people you are, in a Discord call with. And our friend group does that a decent amount and be like, oh, hey, you're playing, we're going to play something later, but you're in the middle of this right now. Just stream that, and we'll all watch you play that and, talk about it. And stuff like that I love. I was not as big of a fan of it when I was a kid, but I think as I've gotten older, I've become way more interested in that type of thing, way more interested in just kind of the social element of watching somebody play through a game. And then in terms of the more, actual content-focused stuff, I absorb a decent amount of it, but I would say I have a pretty high kind of, not bar, that's maybe the wrong word there, but I have a very specific type of thing that I like there. I'm not, most Twitch streamers I don't enjoy, most big Twitch streamers I don't enjoy, most really popular Let's Play groups I'm not, a huge part of, but I mean, if it's just hey, here's somebody that I kind of like playing through games and I'm just looking for something to kind of do either in the background, or I just have 15 minutes while I'm eating food, or, I'm trying to fall asleep, but I'm, having trouble, so I just want to watch something to kind of drift off to sleep. That's kind of where that type of content comes in for me. And I would say I actually end up, between those three subsets of things, I end up consuming a lot of that content, a lot more than I thought I initially did.
Yeah, I'm pretty much generally the same on you as that, so I'm not going to list too much, but I am someone who will I'm more in I less watch things like streams and more just VODs or Let's Play YouTube videos and stuff like that. I'm more of I watch a lot of that kind of content, but I don't really interact with the community or the scenes and stuff like that. I stay very separated from it all. I don't know if you interact with the community at all for those
so
areas.
That's actually something interesting that I kind of want to talk a little bit more about, because I tend not to interact with the community, and I think part of the reason that I think even on this podcast I've been pretty vocal in the past of not liking the word Let's Play and not liking being associated with doing Let's Plays or anything like that, which I've definitely softened on over the years as I found more and more people who do that type of content that I like. But I think a lot of the community around YouTube games cultures and Twitch games culture is not good. It's
Sure.
actively toxic or actively aggressive in a way that really puts me off from wanting to engage with the community. But I think you can also find really, if you find YouTubers or, just people at like games outlets that end up playing a lot of games videos that like work really hard to curate a positive community and like give off a type of energy that attracts a positive community. I could definitely see the value in interacting in those types of communities. I just tend not to, because I very rarely do in anything. Like, I'll just enjoy the content and then move on with my life.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. Sometimes I'll just read what the community is saying, but I've never really like directly interact with that people. I never really interact with anything online like that at all. Like even like forum posts. I know this is a little bit off topic, but things like that. Like I like to read that kind of stuff, but I guess I'm what they call a lurker, dude. I'm a true and honest lurker.
So I totally am too. But do you ever have like the idea that like, oh man, it would be really cool to find like a really small community dedicated to stuff like that and like really get in to be a part of it and like really, get into the weeds? Because
that would be so
every
cool.
time I hear about like, oh yeah, this cool forum where they did this stuff, or like, oh yeah, like there's a really good community surrounding this like Let's Play or whatever. It's like, oh, that'd be really fun. But
How do I get in?
don't. I just don't. I won't put any effort in.
How do you get in? You know what I mean? Like some people say, oh, it's as easy. You just kind of like join the community and you start commenting on stuff. But like they got that. I feel like a lot of communities like that just have like I feel like I'm in high school again or something like that, where it's like they got clicks and I gotta like prove myself or something like that. Does that make any sense?
It totally does, but I think the communities that are worth being a part of have a lot less of that.
Yeah, you're completely right. Or I feel like a lot of them are just so big that it's like those sort of cliques are just like they don't exist because it's just too large, and it's so hard to even see what who's out there that enjoys this content or is talking about it, and then you sort of enter a weird like echo chamber of like the different styles. I don't know, it's
chambers of jokes from 4 years ago that you don't understand because you're just joining the community now.
Yeah, stuff like that. So
love it.
Before 2012 I didn't watch like any gameplay video or never knew about anything like that wasn't like a walkthrough. Like, did you? When did you kind of start consuming this content yourself? I'm curious.
So it really, really depends on your definition of this content, which I think now would maybe be a good time to like. We say this content in like super broad terms, but what specifically are we talking about here, right? Because I think there is a distinct difference.
Or Let's Plays, or.
So what? And that's like, what do you consider a Let's Play? I think that is the thing that I want to anchor down, right? Because when I think Let's Play, I think of like, oh, the Game Grump's doing X number of games or like X number of episodes on one game, or like, oh yeah, this specific guy played through like, this whole 40-hour game and you can watch it in 30-minute chunks. And like, I still don't engage with too much of that. I do a little bit, but not much. But I mean, back in 2009, 2010 and stuff, I was watching a lot of stuff like, Day 9 would do StarCraft videos or other things where it's like, oh, he's going to analyze this game, or, oh, he's going to talk about like this specific topic, or, this will be a 30-minute episode where it's kind of like a podcast. And like, that's kind of in that vein, but I never considered it a Let's Play, even if he was playing new games or doing something for like 1 or 2 episodes in a row.
I would say anything that is, for me, it's more about the personality. The personality-based video game content. Everything that's more analytical, I don't put in that same. I put that in like walkthroughs and like like discussing strategies and stuff like that, which isn't like, I'm not like invalidating as not being content, but like it's just different to me. Like I put that in a different basket completely.
Okay, but somebody who plays like a variety of games, like again, I watch Northern Lion, most days, and he will tend to do like, oh, here's 8 episodes a day, and it's like 20 to 30-minute episodes usually of like, oh, here's this game, here's that game, I did another run of this, I did another that, but it's not like... I would
classify that as a Let's Player.
Okay, so yeah, I would say I started to come to Let's Play type content then probably around probably around 2012. That's about the time I started getting really invested in the like Giant Bomb ecosystem, which is weird because it's so much more of a like production because it's an actual company. Right. But what they do is extremely personality style videos playing video games, and then also they do like reviews and previews and stuff, but then they have a lot of series where it's just 15 episodes of them playing a game.
Sure. And I think that's interesting that do you know if Giant Bomb started doing like that, the more like gameplay and talkover style content, or did they start with the production stuff?
I think they started more with the production stuff because they were like a break off of Whiskey Media, which is a break off of like GameSpot.
Got it.
So it is a whole long thing, but most of the people there came from like GameSpot or, whatever, old actual games like media type stuff.
I think it's really interesting to think about where people come from as far as like this was a production company that, did a lot of video game stuff, and then they started working on some of that content. But a lot of the people that I watch came from Let's Plays because it was the thing to do on YouTube or wherever. And then they're like, this isn't what I really want to do, but I know my fan base wants me to do this. So I still do it. But also I make music videos, and I want to write comedy sketches, and I want to make these like this TV show kind of stuff. And because their personality is like, people are attached to that personality, they tend to latch on to whatever content that they release. So it's really interesting, either, flip flop, because it also goes the other way where, like there are personalities that maybe have some sort of video game related or media related position, and then they start playing games, and then people watch them play those games. So it can really flip flop, but I feel like the games to other stuff is more likely than not.
Yeah, and I think that's popular because, it's just such an easy route in for creatively minded folks to be like, here's a thing that will have some degree of popularity because games are popular and is like a hobby of mine, that also the nature of a Let's Play allows it to be extremely conversational, so you can, essentially like work on your Type 5 while you're doing it. And I think it just makes sense that you would get into that and then be like, oh, actually, I'm just like, I just wanted to create a hobby and a creative outlet. Now I want to like really, now that I have a way to make money off of this, I really want to focus on like streamlining to that creative outlet that I always was interested in the first place.
Yeah. Do you have like, we've done a couple streams, and we did our couple of our city building game series stuff. Do you have like a lot of desire to do that kind of stuff?
I mean, I think so. Specifically with like the you get two very different things, right? Because and again, when we're talking about this, we've done a little, like capital L little bit of like streaming to a small number of people and making like Duncan said, like 3 YouTube videos or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think they kind of scratch different itches for me, but I do think I find them most interesting enough that I would want to keep doing them. Like streaming in particular, I think is really interesting and different, and I wonder how it would feel. Like, it's just such a different thing, I imagine, us streaming to like 6 people versus streaming to like 5,000 people and having an active chat.
Yeah.
Like, I think the experience is probably so wildly different that I don't know if I would enjoy it at this point. But I think we've done so little of it that it's
hard to say.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It is still new and exciting, so I think I am maybe more positive on it than I would end up being. But we also there's so much space left to play in that area that it's just really interesting.
Let's get into the actual games, like the games themselves that these people are playing. When you watch someone play a game, or when it comes to just the topic of playing games and watching someone play it, does it ruin the value or like the effectiveness or anything quality wise? Does it ruin anything for you personally, or what's your kind of take on that?
Why don't you hit me with your answer first? Because I've led the first few and I really want to think about that.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's so case by case, and I hate to take a neutral stance on it, but it is so case by case. And I can talk about the different cases for sure, but I don't think there's a clear answer for this one.
I would say, here's my breakdown of it. Like, how do you feel in story-heavy games versus mechanically focused games?
A lot of times people say you can't be spoiled by like how the game plays or like what you do in the game, because like, or the levels in the game, and the grasp. But I think part of the enjoyment of playing a mechanically heavy game is discovery itself. It's discovering that you can have this cool kind of weapon or type of ability that leads you into something else. That that I feel like a lot of people don't value that as being something that's spoilery, or like I think even trailers do a really bad job at not, like, they want to show you as much as they can, but I think they end up showing you way too much about the mechanics. And if I'm watching someone play that, all of that discovery just sort of gets lost in a way. But
that makes total sense to me. Like, because I play a lot of roguelike games, and if I or like roguelike or strategy heavy games, and if I'm watching somebody play a game that I have an interest in playing or have only played a little bit of, like, it does genuinely irk me when they like find out a cool synergy or strategy or unlock something that changes the way the game is played, because then I know when I go back to it, I'm going to already have that in my mind as like, well, here's the solution to this, or here's like, okay, well, this is like, I should just play for this thing that I know is coming up.
Yeah, dude, ripperoni puzzle games, like, forget about it. You know what I mean? Like, you've got that solved. That's in your brain. But I think watching a game that you've already played makes sense, but we're talking about, watching something you haven't played before. So it's just so dependent, and it's personal preference. Like, here's an example that I think is kind of cool. Is I was talking to one of my friends about like playing Vermintide Warhammer 2 or whatever, Warhammer Vermintide 2, and it's like $8 on Steam. And I was like, let's just buy it and play around with it. I know it's not like amazing, but it's kind of cool. And his response was just like, well, we'll talk to another friend of ours about it who's already played it, and I can ask him. Like, yeah, but isn't it just more fun to just like just buy it and then discover what is there for you? Like, it's clearly not like a bad game, so why have someone break the gameplay loop down for you? And it matters so much more to me to discover that in myself, but others, it just doesn't matter. What matters to you should be your gauge of what you should and shouldn't watch.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with that. And I think, like you said, it is person by person. I think with story-focused games specifically, like, obviously the experience is degraded significantly if you watch a Let's Play of it before, right? Because you just won't have that sort of, shock value of things. You won't be surprised. There's something to be said. I worked with somebody who would not go see a movie without reading the full synopsis of what the plot line was beforehand, because they liked knowing that, like, they still found enjoyment out of, hey, how did these things happen? What was the construction of it? How did it get to point A to point B? And like, if that's your thing, fine. I'm not here to judge you for it. But I will say, for me personally, watching like walkthroughs or Let's Plays of whatever of story focused games that I have already beaten, I fucking love. Like, I love catching other people's reactions. I think that is undervalued in terms of kind of changing your view or your kind of perception of a game. Obviously, to some extent, like, there's just going to be people who just play through it and don't talk that much, or there's going to be people who play through it and just crack jokes the whole time, and that's less what I'm talking about. I'm talking more about the people who will like actually like play through it and talk with it and engage with the text a little bit. But I think like that in some small degree does a lot of what you and I do here on this podcast, right? Like, how many times have we done an episode on a game and walked away from it feeling like we understood a lot more about the game, or our opinions of it had shifted a little bit, or like, oh, I didn't like this, but I really like this now that you've kind of explained why you like the framing around why you liked it. And I think you can get a lot of that with Let's Plays, and I think that like that specifically, like that fact has been a lot of what helped kind of turn me around on that specific type of content.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to like watching games that you've already seen, especially with shocking reveals, it is like, it's so much fun to watch compilations of people, have their own personal reaction to that. And I think people obviously exaggerate it, right? Like, they got to be entertaining in a way, so they do a lot of exaggeration, and some of it comes off as legitimate, and other times it comes off as really,
obviously fake.
Yeah. I was gonna use a different word, but that's way much better word. So yes, and I think that is a really fun part of it too, and I think that kind of connects to this this popularization and birth of like these horror games that just get so many buco views because of this like secondhand enjoyment of watching someone play through a horror game. And I think it's just like I've thought about it a lot, and I think it is a lot of the same reason why like skydiving videos are really popular, or like when people hang glide off of mountains and stuff like that. Obviously, there are more people who are more likely to play a scary game than go hang gliding, but I think in a way, it's kind of the same where it's like, well, I'm not going to play that scary game, so I'm going to watch this person play it and get freaked out, and I get to enjoy watching them be freaked out by it and be tortured, and you know, that kind of way. And it's just insane how popular it's got.
Yeah, I mean, like, horror games are the most likely to elicit a, like, visceral and vocal response from that type of person anyway, because, like, you know, you're being scared, and that's very obvious when you're being scared. So I think it, you know, it makes sense, right? Like, I loved watching, I watched somebody play through at least the beginning of Amnesia: The Dark Descent on stream or whatever, and that was kind of before it hit this peak popularity, like the spike in popularity of horror games. And, like, it is genuinely a lot of fun to see somebody who is legitimately scared, but like also an entertainer and trying to be entertaining at the same time, and seeing like those two parts of their personality clash. But you know, like you said, with everything, it becomes popular, and out of that rises like a lot of people recognizing that it's popular and then playing to that specific idea. And then, you know, the culture's gone one step further, so now games are playing to the idea that this type of game is popular on stream, so a lot of people see it, and then they kind of build their game around the idea of, like, this would be really good for streamers. And,
yeah,
you know,
isn't that
even
crazy?
It's very bizarre. I don't know that I've seen anything that's done it well so far, but I actually do think it's genuinely a really interesting idea of like, hey, I'm building this game around the idea that it's going to be streamed to other people, and like with that design philosophy in mind, I can tailor this game to that exact experience.
I mean, I
have no idea how lucrative that is, but
yeah, and I mean, like, I think it's done in very minor ways. Like, you know, there's the obvious, like, I know you're streaming fourth wall breaking kind of stuff you can do.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are a lot of things that play to the strengths of being watched. But I'm so fascinated by games being birthed out of like this culture. Like, the only reason we have a bajillion Five Nights at Freddy's games is because of this culture. Like, that game just wouldn't be what it is without those people. And I think that these content creators essentially make choices and trends of game design. And that's just like, I don't know, to me, that's huge and like mind blowing to me. But yeah,
it's weird to think about, and how all of those different systems interact with each other in a way that, you know, ends up shaping entirely new experiences. But I don't know. I'm genuinely kind of on the fence about how I feel about that. It almost feels like it's pandering to an audience a little bit.
Yeah.
But I also, like, I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. Like, I don't think pandering is inherently bad in any way, shape, or form. It just, for whatever reason, my initial reaction is like, ooh, I don't think like my initial. So I will say maybe part of this is a lot of these games will then put out trailers, and those trailers will involve, like, here's reactions from Let's Players, and that shit sucks 1,000% of the time. I have never seen a trailer and then seen, like, and here's PewDiePie losing his mind, and not been like, I don't want to play this game anymore because this trailer fucking sucks, even if the game looks good beforehand. So don't do that if you're making a game, but I need to try and divorce that particular feeling from the actual product itself, and I have a hard time doing that.
Yeah. Do you think... I don't know. I think it feels slightly dystopian in a way, but it isn't. Like, it really isn't, but I'm actually kind of a fan of it. I don't think it hurts anyone. And I think a lot of people find joy from these games. I just hope that the people making the games for these like, experiences that are like, hey, here's a horror experience that I know is going to get picked up by the big guys and played and reacted to. And I hope that those companies still make enough out of it to have profit from it, because I hate the idea that I wanted to make a horror game that happens to be streamed really well. And if it goes really well being streamed, do people even want to buy it? Because if I watch a horror game that's only 3 hours and I've watched the whole thing from a Let's Player or a streamer or whatever, I don't think I'd even want to play it. Do you know what I mean?
No, I think horror games 1,000% do not fall into the category of games that are improved if you have seen them before. But specifically because they're supposed to be like shock value, jump scares, tension without you knowing what's going on and stuff like that. But I wonder how much, because like if I see a horror game streamed, like I see 3 hours of it, I don't have any inclination to buy it. But if I have a friend who is interested in that type of game, I would be inclined to tell them to buy it potentially. I would also be inclined to tell my friends, oh, hey, this would be really fun to like watch you play through in the same kind of way that we were talking about before. Like I would love to watch some of our friends play through horror games because I think that could be really interesting. But that definitely is not the market share of me enjoying something and telling somebody else to pay for it is definitely not as good as just getting me to buy something.
Yeah, that's completely true. So, and I mean, I see these games on the top sellers sometimes on Steam, so I'm like, I'm sure they're doing fine. It's just really interesting because it's a double-edged sword where it's like these games wouldn't be popularized without them, but also people aren't playing them because of it. So it's like this weird cycle. I don't know.
Yeah, and I wonder how many of the people watching have already played the game. Like because if you look in like Twitch chat, you'll see a ton of people being like, "Oh man, it's about to get crazy" or something. Whenever they're moving towards like some objective, and I think it's possible that it's just, hey, these are people who also love this game and then bought it, played it immediately, and tuned in a week later for this person's like playthrough of it.
Or let me hit you with this.
Okay.
They've already watched someone play it, and now they're searching for other people they like to watch play it.
Fuck, I've done that before, though. I've done that.
Yep.
I definitely did that with Life is Strange, and I definitely did that with Amnesia, and I definitely wanted to do that with Doki Doki.
Yeah. Oh my god, dude. Those Sayori reaction videos are peak.
Honestly, I got everything I needed to out of that with just like 15-minute compilation videos. I didn't actually need to watch a full run through of that.
Yeah. Cool. I'm glad we got to extend on that because it's still something I'm going to think about a lot because I think it's really just games being birthed from internet culture is so weird to me. And I don't think I'll ever be able to stop thinking about it.
And it's like, I want to be clear when I said like, I don't think pandering is inherently bad. Pandering can be real fucking bad real quickly. Like, it is a hard line to walk. Like, if you have an idea and it's creatively interesting and you say, okay, I want to do this and, like, put this fun twist on it, cool. But if you're like, I feel like the problem is pandering very quickly becomes creatively, like, not necessarily, like, either bankrupt or just empty. It just becomes like, hey, here's a bunch of, like, fun throw-offs to internet ideas or memes or culture. And that's kind of, like, that doesn't have any staying power. That doesn't have any like actual reason for existing other than haha, here's a one-off joke,
Yeah, and I mean, those can exist. Like, I mean, we've got like Trump president simulator, like bullet protector. You know what I mean? Like that kind of.
I don't think those should exist. I think that's adding nothing to the culture.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, they exist for those one-off moments, and you can tell like the quality of the design and the art and stuff like that is that of being one-off, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And I think those games are okay because right now we have so much else to look at. I think that's okay. And that's another thing when we're talking about like watching people play games, is there are just so many games. And I like this because like, I know I'm never going to play through all of like in Mario 3 or whatever. Like there's just so many games that I know I'm not going to play through all these. So I might as well watch someone play it because I don't have the time to do it or want to see it to the end. So I think that's another huge attraction to watching those games.
So I actually wanna ask you a question here, kind of in line with that. How has your relationship with watching other people play games and to some extent also listening to other people talk about games, specifically how has that changed now that we create content around games? Because I don't know about you, but I occasionally will find myself hesitant of if this person is playing through a game that I think we might do for the podcast, or hey, these people are talking about a game that we finished for the podcast but haven't recorded our episode on. I'm very frequently find myself pushed away from that because I don't want to be too heavily influenced by other people's opinions of things. Has your kind of relationship to this type of content changed at all since we started doing the podcast?
Honestly, it hasn't, because the kind of content that I consume, they usually don't play story games, or if they do, they're usually older, and we typically don't touch that kind of stuff. Okay. So I'm watching more silly stuff that just kind of is very surface level. I don't really get too deep into the kind of stuff that we do on a day-to-day basis, and if I do, I ignore anything that is like you said, sort of if it has potential to be on our show, I tend not to watch it on someone else's. So other than
That's
that
fair.
though, I think it's changed my perspective on analytical videos. I think I get really inspired, appreciative, or thankful. It's something along that line of people who make these 45-minute video essays, or even audio podcast essays, or anything like that about a game, and not just free form stringing like we do. They're really analyzing those kind of things. And since we've been doing this, I've been so much more appreciative of those kind of things, just because of the way that people break things down. And I just think it's so hard to do. And I think a lot of those people receive such harsh critiques, and the fact that they should always be quote unquote right, or, they disagree with the point, so it's a bad video, but they're just raising points for you. And that's a little bit off topic, but I think it's just changed the way I see analyzing those kind of things.
That's interesting, because I personally just don't engage with that much of that on a video level. I definitely do in terms of podcasts, because I listen to a lot of podcasts, and some of them are very similar structures to what we do, or with more mechanical focused games. But in terms of videos, I just don't tend to engage with analytical long form videos about games. So it's interesting to hear kind of how you have viewed those and changed them, and sort of what the community is, because the only times I've engaged with them have usually been when people are like, hey, check out this fucking horrible thing where this person doesn't know what they're talking about, and I'm like, haha, you're right, they don't, and then I move on. So I don't I don't ever seek out any that I think could be interesting or anything like that.
Yeah. YouTube just feeds them to me like I'm a dumb little baby in a high chair. They airplane that shit right into my brain, dude.
Oh man, I will say one other thing on that point. I wanted to touch on is, not yes, obviously everything that I said about before I watch any videos, or before I listen to any podcasts about games we've played before, I try to avoid them, because I know, hey, we're gonna do this. But then after we've played those games, I will frequently go back and listen to them, and that's a terrible experience. Because I'll hear people say things, and they'll be like, oh, here's what I'm getting out of this scene, and here's this characterization, and I'm like, we fucked that one right up. We just did not do a good job on that one, huh? damn. So I think to some extent that that my interaction with that has changed, because there are some episodes that I would have loved if we didn't play a game on it. I'm inherently just comparing coverage to what we did instead.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I tend there's a really good Teddy Roosevelt quote about comparing yourself to others, and I think it fits.
You about to pull out some Teddy.
Hold on, I'm gonna find it. Comparison is the thief of joy.
Oh, okay.
I like that.
All right.
I like that. And I think that's I don't know. I think it's an inevitable way that you're going to consume something. If you analyze something, you talked about it, and then you listen to someone else say that, there's no way you're not going to, but I don't know.
But also,
think
I
gotten
need to
much
know
better
when
at
we
it.
fuck things up so we can do better, you know? Like, I need to know, oh, this person, like, very clearly just had a better read on it than we did. I should try to be more thoughtful of things like that in the future.
Yeah, I guess so. But I'm sure
it's a weird tightrope to walk.
I'm sure there's stuff that we said that they probably didn't either, or like, you know, maybe a joke or two that just like landed better over here. You know how funny we are.
Oh, we're so funny. Any random 2-minute snippet of our podcast and you'll be busting a gut in no time.
So you mentioned earlier that sometimes you will like put it on when you need to sleep. And I do the exact same thing. And I've been trying to rack my brain why, and for some reason it's the loud ones. It's the inappropriate ones. And I mean, they're not like super, super loud. It's just like you know, why does this help me fall asleep? They're being like jokey and like being kind of like in your face about stuff. They are like playing a game with a lot of loud sounds and brighter colors and a lot of movement. Why does this help people sleep? How is this a sleep aid? You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy to me.
I can speak for me, and I can give you like a genuine, real, honest to God answer.
Yeah.
Which is, so I mentioned like, oh, sometimes I'll do this when I'm having trouble sleeping. Haha. That was a lie. I watch Northern Lion videos literally every single night I've gone to bed for the past, like, I think 4 years at this point.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you just fall into a routine, right? Like, it started because I would watch, like, I found his videos entertaining and I would watch them and I would just stay up too late watching them because I worked later, and then I would like fall asleep at my computer and then I would just move over and pass out. So that kind of created a little bit of a, just sort of a connection there in my brain of like, oh, these videos I watch at nighttime to fall asleep, even though it wasn't the inherent purpose of them. But like, you know, if I think back to before I watched these videos, I spent a lot of time like laying in bed, and then just like my mind would race to and from different things, and I would just like replay events of the day or things in my past or like way things could play out in the future. But like that doesn't happen when there is an active thing for you to put your attention on. And if it's something that is not so engaging that you need to like really focus on it, it gets me into that really sweet spot where it's like, okay, here's a thing that like has an audio and a visual component, so it's engaging enough of my brain that like I have to be aware of it and I can't be thinking about other things as much, but not so much so that like I can't, like I have to see how this concludes. And then it, my mind just doesn't race. Like I don't spend time going over things in my head. I don't feel like I'm struck with insomnia or anything like that, and it just helps me fall asleep. And I think I have to assume it's similar for a lot of other people, because I know a lot of people who watch TV or watch videos or listen to something to sleep. I assume it's the same, but I don't know. That for me, that's what it is, though, is it just keeps my mind from racing.
That is exactly the same thing for me. And it's like, I can't even remember a time where the TV wasn't on at a low volume and I fell asleep. You know what I mean? Like I used to have a TV with cable on it, and I just let, whatever channel just play at a super low volume, because again, the same thing. I stayed up way too late when I was a kid, so I'd watch TV and
wake up to
those
good
asleep.
4 a.m. infomercials.
Yeah, exactly. And I just can't remember a time where that kind of sound didn't happen. And the reason that it started was like I'd have the same thing. I'd have anxieties about the next day, or like what happened today, or what girl I had a big crush on. I just couldn't stop thinking about her. That kind of stuff. And I think that carries on through adulthood, but just about different things. And I don't know, I feel the exact same way. And it's just crazy that this is the thing that I latched onto afterwards. Like sometimes I will put like a sitcom on, like How I Met Your Mother or Scrubs.
Yeah.
But more likely than not, it's going to be a gameplay video and stuff like that. And it's just, it's weird.
It is, especially because every day I'm like, I had trouble, like, not every day, but like every time I have trouble sleeping, or I've been like having trouble sleeping for a, brief span, or it's like, oh, I've been feeling really tired for this last week, and I'll like, look up stuff, and people are like, well, make sure you're not using screens for at least 30 minutes before you go to bed. I was like, okay, well, I do look at a screen for 30 minutes after I fall asleep still, so like I don't think I'm hitting that benchmark. Is this just an unhealthy lifestyle? But then I hear about so many other people doing it, and I go, well, as long as we're all unhealthy together, it's fine then. There's no problem.
Yeah, I have the TV. I turned the TV on the lowest possible brightness and contrast it can be.
I'm sure it doesn't make that much of a difference, but I do it anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Anyways, moving on from our unhealthy habits.
Oh, it's good. No, that's the real shit. That's the shit that people can relate to. Clip that. That's our new Twitter thing.
Well, remember like 45 minutes ago when I was like, I just kind of want to talk about my history.
Oh, yeah, you didn't do that, huh?
Yeah, I didn't get to do that one.
This is what happens when we do a free-form episode. We just blow up past. Remember when you asked me how I was feeling about like Twitch and YouTube stuff, and I answered, and then you asked a follow-up question, and then you never answered? That part happened too.
Yeah. So here's a cool whiteboard, and I'm like drawing my life on it.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever watched those videos? It's like
No.
drawing my life. Really?
No.
These used to
I
be
have
really
no
popular
idea what you're talking about.
for personalities on YouTube. I consume way more YouTube than you do.
Apparently, this is true. No, this is obviously true. I consume very little YouTube outside of like the 2 Let's Players I follow.
Yeah. It used to be a thing where people would like write on draw on whiteboards and then narrate over their life about it. They'd be like, well, me and my dad, we grew up in Arkansas. That was until we moved. And then they'd like erase it, and then they draw a new state.
Huh.
I don't know. Anyways,
what a weird relic of YouTube culture. Yeah. I can imagine exactly what that looks like, but I'm very confident I've never seen one before.
So this is me doing mine, except you can't see. I'm drawing really, really, really good. So when I moved from my little town in Pennsylvania to dude, I can't talk to myself, to the big city. And when I moved to the big city, I can't keep calling it the big city.
No, you totally can. People think New York, and you're off the hook. You're good.
Yeah, I didn't have like any friends other than my significant other that I moved there to be with. Quick hint, guys, don't do that, please. Do it if you think it's completely correct, but take some time to really think about it.
This episode is really airing out all the unhealthy stuff we've done throughout the course of our life, huh?
Exactly. And this is the start of one unhealthy habit.
Are video games bad, actually?
That should be our next no controller necessary. Is, are video games bad? And by the end, we realize that video games are so bad for our lives, and we stop playing them. And we stop making this podcast, and we talk about like
absolutely
gardening.
Do that. We should do that. We should put out a 2-hour YouTube video title, "Are video games bad?" Actually, and then we never release another episode on anything ever.
We just convert, dude. No, we convert our like channel like a gardening channel or like something that is so divorced from video games, like just talking about the biology of insects. You know what I mean? Like something that's just so far off.
Mm-hmm. What's the study of insects called, Duncan?
Insectology.
Okay, good. We're there already. All right. So you moved to the big city.
I moved to the big city, and so I don't really, like I said, I don't really have any friends. The college I went to just didn't pop up for me with friends. So I was a huge fan of JonTron back in the day, which was that AVGN style of review of just being like, and you can't even get past the door here, which now is like, that's old. Like nobody really is. People are making those kind of videos, but they're not hitting big anymore.
As far as I know, maybe they're still hitting super big on an audience that I just never engage with.
Yeah, I've kind of tried to find that out of curiosity, but I don't find a lot. Correct me if I'm wrong. But anyways, so I was a big fan of JonTron from that. And then he announced that he's like, hey, I'm doing Let's Plays with Ego Raptor. And that's where Game Grumps came from, as many of you know. And that started like this weird fascination with it for me. Like, I would watch those videos a lot. Like, I consumed a lot of that content. I've probably seen every one of them up to a certain point and over multiple times, because again, it was a sleep aid. It was a work aid. Like, I'd be working and I'd be listening to it, which is terrible. I can't do that anymore. My brain doesn't function like that. But I used to think it did, but really I was just really lonely. So these personalities, and this is something that I want to get into, but I'll keep going. These personalities, like, it melded in my brain. Like, these are people that I know, and you do know them, but it's important that you know that they don't know you too. And like, there's a logical connection that almost everyone can make. That's like, oh yeah, they don't know me either. But a lot of people like cross wires or something. Just, I don't know. There's just something that happens.
It's also important to know that, like, but also you don't know them. Like, you know them, but every second they're on camera, they are also like on camera. So like, you also don't know. Their parasocial relationships are bad.
Yeah. And so like, and that can lead to a whole other conversation about like, why did you do this thing? Or why did you say this thing off of the camera, off the, anyways, I'm getting off of that for a bit. Yeah. And I think those wires crossed for me a bit. I wasn't like completely aware of it, but I think that's what was happening to me. And so over time, I made more friends. I disconnected a little bit. But I still consume that content like on almost a daily basis, where it's like, okay, I get up, I'm cooking breakfast, time to put on one of my more favorite Let's Play channels or anything like that. And I'll listen to it, and then it'll kind of be my start and end to the day. And it's weird because that is every day, almost every day. And it's just, you see those views and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because I can't be the only one doing that. You know what I mean? And just, it's wild how popular that has gotten, and like how much it hurtled me in a way, whether it was a helpful Band-Aid or unhealthy, I don't really know, but it was a Band-Aid that I used, and now I can't get it off because I don't know. It's just something I can't go without now. And it's just really weird.
And I think it's such an interesting and weird phenomenon too, right? Because you see it, I think, most often in that type of scenario where somebody, has recently moved, or somebody is living on their own now and is just uncomfortable with silence, or, somebody just like has trouble sleeping, or just needs some sort of white noise in the background. And like that, it starts off as such an innocent thing like that. And I think it really does grow. And like you said, like, you started to have those lines blur a little bit between like personality that you're engaging with their content in, and like integral like part of your life, or like social group or something like that, even though it's like completely 100% a one-way connection. Like it, but I think that happens like with a lot of people, and I think a lot of people also don't like then come to recognize that those lines are blurred. They just start to use that in place of a social group, and like that's where you get a lot of the like super huge problems with internet culture. This episode is like making me a little uncomfortable because it's like I have an inherent problem with a lot of these things, but also I engage with them in the same way you're describing very frequently, and it's terrifying.
Dude, you want me to make you even more uncomfortable by asking
I don't,
this question?
But do it anyway. Yeah.
Do you ever copy mannerisms, like vocal mannerisms or jokes or like styles of comedy from that, or even styles of speaking from that content that you're watching?
So
you can flip it back to me if you want to.
No, I do. I think we both do. And the thing is that I don't think that's as problematic, right? Like, because I also do that with just like my actual friends. Like, I do that with just people I find entertaining. I'm like, oh, that's kind of funny, and then I find myself like, oh, like, this is pretty funny. I'm going to kind of like take a little bit of that, or take a shared joke from that we can then distribute amongst our friends who engage in that type of media. So yeah, absolutely, I will end up like trying to do that. But when I catch myself doing that, I try to kind of like scale it back a little bit and be like, oh, okay, like I shouldn't just steal that type of thing. Like I should do this, but I think it frequently starts as just like in jokes with other people who know that type of thing. It's pretty uncommon for me to take something whole cloth that nobody else I know with engages with and then just like use that all over the place, you know?
I do that constantly, and you have no idea. Not constantly. I shouldn't say that. Also, not on this podcast.
Oh, good.
Yeah, never.
This
on
is
this
a
podcast.
wholly original work. We can never be sued.
Yeah, completely. Now I do that a lot with people I know, and like sometimes, and this is real talk stuff. Sometimes I know who watches what, so I know what to say. Sometimes where it's like, I'm like, okay, I know you consume this kind of content, and it makes me like, there's no other way to say it. It makes me deep down cringe when I know someone's trying to like copy someone else's shiz, and they're taking too much out of it, because every joke has been done. Everything has been done. Like, there's no way to be completely original, right? But then there's just like blatant, like, I ripped the heart out of this thing and it is in my hand beating still, and I'm going to throw it at your face, you know? And then there's just like lightly taking it. And I partake in a little bit of both. Like, sometimes I can't help myself and I'll just say something and I'll be like, I shouldn't have said that. I know that's not mine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like, that concept isn't mine. But yeah, I cringe myself out a lot when I do that. And I'm like, wow, I shouldn't do this. That's stupid.
Yeah, I definitely, I know that experience for sure. But again, I try to, at least in recent years, I have tried to like either only use like direct in jokes in a way that it's referential with people who get it, or like if I completely ape something and somebody laughs at it and be like, oh no, that's not, like, I was just, you know, quoting this other thing that I saw, or oh, this is actually 100% the comedy stylings of XYZ, you know.
But isn't that so awkward to have be like, tell something funny and then be like, but that's not me though. That's someone else. Like, I feel like it's true, and you know, no one has a problem with it deep down, but sometimes it just like puts silence in the room, and it's just like, okay, cool.
I think some degree of that is totally in your head, man, because I feel like most of the time that's not how it goes. Even when I've seen you do it, that's usually not how it goes. I think you're just like really leaning into the anxious part of your brain that's like, oh, now everyone's really uncomfortable. I think a lot of the time it's just like, oh, no, like, you know, some people are like, oh, that's really funny. And be like, oh, I got it from here. And I'm like, cool. And then we all move on with our lives.
That's true. I think it's different in different groups. For you, it's not as much, but in a couple other social groups, I get that. But
that's fair. That's
anyways,
fair. It's interesting. It's interesting. I'm torn because part of me really wants to keep diving deep in these like parasocial relationships and the idea of like people getting too connected to personalities, and again the idea of people not knowing personalities. It's like really uncomfortable for me because I don't like feel like I have enough of a grasp on that type of thing to talk about it well. Also, like, you know, the only two examples you brought up were Ego Raptor, who I like, but I haven't engaged with their content in a long time, and JonTron, who I liked a lot, and then he said that really racist shit for a while, and I was like, ooh, that one video is a super bad look, my dude, and I've never been able to enjoy his content again, even though he's, like, put out a, I think, decent apology about it, but I haven't, like, followed any of his stuff since then.
Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, and I've mentioned this on the show before, I have a very hard time separating art from artist. Like, I can't, like, you know, if a musical artist I like comes out and says some just, like, really heinous shit, I just sort of stop listening to what they did. And, like, you know, I can't watch actors where I know that they are actually, like, horrible people and enjoy their work as much.
Yeah.
So that type of thing hits differently, and I think it hits way differently in that particular instance just because it's like, oh, I was able to physically watch this 20-minute video of this happening as opposed to reading an article about it and being able to forget about it. Even, you know, divorcing myself from all of the after effects of what happened after, because, like, I don't know how that all got resolved afterwards because I didn't engage with it anymore. Not that I really engaged with it that much at the time anyway, but, you know.
I think it's largely up to personal preference. But for me, I think that people have the right to go back on things and basically say, you know what? I was wrong about this thing. You know, that was ridiculous for me to say. And sometimes apologies are really bad. Sometimes they're okay. But when someone recognizes they've done something completely wrong, like I say wrong and stupid stuff all the time. And I know it's, I'll probably say it on here, and I definitely say it in my real life. And when you're just like being recorded all the time, I'm sure, I don't know. It's difficult. It's a difficult water to tread. And I think that when you recognize that and just say, I'm just going to leave that space entirely, I think that's the only smart thing you can do. But I don't know. I don't have as hard of a time separating the art from the artist because I just don't look at that kind of stuff as much, and I try and keep it out as much because I don't know, I've got my own stuff to deal with. I don't want to worry about how this guy's racist or not, or this one, I just try not to, but I know it makes a huge influence on certain things. But as long as it's not in the art, like if it's in the art, I have a problem with it. But I don't know. I go back and forth on it. But I would like to talk about more about that stuff that you were talking about earlier with like
it's such a thing that I really genuinely and truly only have one-sided view on, right? And that's like that makes it difficult to talk about because I have never been in the hot seat where there is somebody who has that type of a relationship with me, where they think they know me and they try to joke around as if they know me, or they try to like, they feel entitled to some degree of like their opinion being heard as if they know me. And I think it's fascinating to look at and try and understand from like a psychological standpoint why people end up in that particular spot. And I completely understand why the people who are, on the end of that, where they're like having people demand things of them, just have no patience for it whatsoever, because to some degree it's like, hey, I make content for you to engage with and you think we're friends now. Fuck that. I don't like, that's not true. Yeah. Like I totally get why people would have that reaction, but it's such a different thing to be in the position where you're like, oh, I've never had that. And actually what we want is feedback from the people who engage with our media right now. So like, please do,
but like
reach out and please do have that sort of attention. But also I can recognize very clearly that like, yes, no, absolutely. If you like a figure because of the content they put out, you're not friends with them, even if you engage with it on the daily. That's just not how that works. Like they don't know you. There is no actual relationship there. But the internet makes it so easy for it to feel like there is.
Yeah. And I think people get really disappointed by the creator's own engagement with it. Like I don't remember like almost any episodes like from before, but, and I know that you guys don't either, but I hear people like really difficult to hear stories from these creators, and they're like, they'll hear like off in the distance, like a reference to one of their videos that they made 3 years ago. And they'll be like, hey dude, like socks on the piano, right dude? You know what I mean? Like, and they just won't know what they're talking about. And I think that's so funny too, where it's like, this thing meant so much to you, but the person who made it doesn't even remember it. And I think you just have to approach them in a more human way. That is what I've learned a lot about hearing people who make content and then meet others who enjoy it. They like expect them to know and enjoy everything that they do about their own content, but they don't really know anything about it or forget about it really easily.
I mean, yeah, it's the same thing as if you walked into my office during my day job and said like, oh, hey, you remember this thing you did on that project 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Like, no, I remember the very broad strokes of that project 2 years ago, but I work a 9 to 5. Like,
because I was hot on that project, Alex. I love that project.
And that's what it is, though, right? Like these people, these people, content creators, they make content, they put it out, and then they turn around and they make more content, because that's like, for a lot of them, that is their job or a hobby that they put a lot of time into. And then, once it goes, you got to focus on the next thing. Like they don't have time to revisit old work. Like we don't have time to go back to old episodes of our podcast and go like, oh, what was it about this one that we liked again? Let's and also we have no fucking interest in doing that.
Yeah.
That sounds like a horrible thing to just be like, I'm just going to listen to a few episodes of our old podcast, because I would just I would hate every minute of it, thinking about all the things we should have done better.
Yeah. I mentioned, that picture of the guy on the armchair, and he's gripping the armchair, and it's like he's being blown back by the speakers. It used to be on old CDs. You ever see
Yeah,
that?
something Max. Yeah.
I imagine that, but it's just your face like wincing and like and you're just gripping onto two arms of an armchair with like AirPods in or some dumb shit like that.
Just
awesome.
Absolutely being blown in the face with the force of all the things I should have said correctly and all the points I should have challenged you on when you were like, Dropsy's a good game. And I was like, no.
Love Dropsy.
I'm kidding. Dropsy, I've softened on it over time.
Yeah.
The ending was still bad, though.
You know what?
Yeah.
You know what's weird?
What?
What's super weird? I don't know. I don't know if I can talk about this.
Okay.
All right, I'm just going to say it.
All right. Buckle up.
If you like this podcast, check it. If you like this podcast, rate it on iTunes, okay? I knew it. I knew you'd all stay for this one, but I caught you. I caught you on camera, and now that you've heard this, you must do it. Don't do it. You don't have to do it. It's not a big deal.
Well, don't tell him not to fucking do it, Duncan. It is a big deal. Do it.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review on iTunes. It does help quite a bit, or any other way you can rate us would help a lot. If you didn't enjoy this episode, I'm so sorry. I personally take all responsibility for it. But instead of lashing out on a very negative review, you should send us a personal, hateful, spited email at thoughtsfromplayer1@gmail.com. Or if you want to recommend any topics, games, questions, things like that, we'd be more than happy to take that in at thoughtsfromplayer1@gmail.com. We also have a Twitter that it's at thoughtsfrompl1, and a Facebook probably. Yeah, we got that one. Just search for us on the Facebook.
We do got a Facebook.
Yeah, we post there sometimes. So we also have a Discord server that is just popping off. Bang, 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 baby. Come on in. The link's in the description.
We also have started streaming on Twitch a little bit more, so we have a Twitch and a YouTube channel. You should check both of those out. I believe the Twitch channel is just Thoughts from Player One, and the YouTube channel is just Thoughts from Player One. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's right.
Yep.
So we're going to start trying to stream there a little bit more. Maybe once a week, maybe once every other week. We'll see. We've got a couple of ideas for things we want to try out, and we'll probably end up exporting a lot of those VODs to YouTube.
The VOD. We did a VOD for games of Alex's childhood that should be out this weekend. I'm gonna make sure it's out this weekend.
So that's a fun one. And we also have started streaming some other stuff, which I think we're going to push to YouTube. I don't know. Just stay tuned. Check it out. We tweet it out at least an hour before we go live every time. So if you follow us there, you should get that notification. And then just follow us on Twitch, and we'll go live there.
Damn, dude. This episode encompassed so much, and I feel like I could talk about this for like 2 more hours, but I want to keep these relatively short. Maybe we'll do a whole other episode on streaming or something. I don't know.
I want to be clear that we absolutely just touched the surface of a lot of these topics, and we know that. Like, we did not take a deep dive into a lot of these things in the way that we maybe otherwise would if we were doing a more focused episode.
We should have done a more focused episode on one of these. Shit.
Maybe. Yeah, we can always come back and do a little bit more on more. We could just revisit this entire topic, a year from now when we have more experience streaming and doing YouTube videos and stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. Neat. Do you have a
cool.
do we do a card for this one?
Dog, I do not remember if we do greeting cards for the end of this episode.
Well,
so I do not have one pulled up.
Yeah. Go ahead. Grab that controller off the floor. I knew you dropped it. It's probably dirty now, so go wash it. And go play those games. Good night. I hate this. I hate this so much.
Don't like it? Don't like closing?
No.